April 26, 1895, Little Italy, New York City. Maria Barbella, a 26-year-old immigrant seamstress, is about to make history, but not the kind anyone would expect. Betrayed by her lover, Domenico Cataldo, after he promised marriage and left her reputation in ruins, Maria had reached her breaking point. That morning, she followed him to a saloon, begging for one last chance. Minutes later, Domenico lay dying in the street, his throat slashed by Maria's hand. What started as a plea for honor ended in blood, and Maria was quickly arrested. Her trial would captivate the nation, but was this really an open and shut case of cold-blooded murder? Or the desperate act of a woman driven to the edge by shame and betrayal? Maria Barbella was born on October the 24th, 1868, in Ferrandina, Italy. Although the landscape was idyllic, her family endured severe financial hardship in the late 19th century. In 1892, they and 24-year-old Maria emigrated to New York City, lured by the promise of better job opportunities. They settled in the Mulberry area, where Maria found work as a seamstress, but unfortunately, life in America proved to be far harsher than they had imagined. The Barbella family, like many immigrants, faced discrimination, exploitation, and a daily grind of survival in a new and unforgiving land. Maria's work days in the factory were marked by long hours, meagre pay, and little respect from her male counterparts. As bad as things already were, they would take a dark turn when she met a man named Domenico Cataldo. In the fall of 1893, as Maria Barbella walked home from her job as a seamstress in Manhattan's Little Italy, she began lingering at a shoeshine booth on Canal and Lafayette Streets. The man behind the booth, Domenico Cataldo, was an Italian immigrant like herself, and it didn't take long before the two began chatting. Cataldo boasted about the money in his bank account, $923, a small fortune, and hinted at his desire for marriage. Maria was approaching 25, and with her parents eager to see her wed, she felt hopeful that Cataldo could be the man to marry. He soon began meeting Maria after work, walking her home. Her parents, strict and traditional, approved of the idea of marriage, but were suspicious of Cataldo's refusal to meet them properly. His casual affections turned more physical, with unwanted advances that left Maria feeling uncomfortable. She confided in her parents, who, adhering to their traditional values, forbade her from seeing him unless he proposed. Months passed without contact, but in March 1895, Cataldo reappeared outside Maria's factory, this time finally promising marriage. Her hopes were reignited. Soon after, on March 28th, while at a bar on Christie Street, Cataldo offered Maria a soda. After taking a sip, the room began to spin. Disoriented and confused, she awoke hours later in a bed beside him, assaulted, with her virginity cruelly taken against her will. Cataldo congratulated her, but Maria felt only shame and ruin. Pleading for him to marry her, she was met with vague promises. She was desperate for the legitimacy of marriage and confronted him again and again, but Cataldo always postponed it, growing more impatient and cold. Finally, on April the 20th, he revealed the bitter truth. He would never marry her. Broken, Maria and her mother, Filomena, confronted the man one last time at Mancuso's saloon. Her mother, furious, demanded he honor his commitment to Maria, warning him that her daughter's reputation and their family's honor were at stake. Cataldo laughed and cruelly suggested he might marry Maria if her family paid him $200, a sum far beyond their means. As her mother stormed out, Maria, desperate and humiliated, asked him one last time if he would be her husband. his reply is stated as being, "Only pigs marry," or "Only a pig would marry you." This enraged Maria, who then suddenly pulled a straight razor from her sleeve and with a swift motion slashed Cataldo's throat. Clutching his neck, Domenico staggered back, blood pouring between his fingers as he stumbled into the street. Horrified bystanders watched as he ran before collapsing on the sidewalk, where he died moments later. Maria returned home in a daze, changing out of her blood-stained clothes. But the police were quick to track her down. When they arrested her, she muttered in broken English, "Me take his blood, so he no take mine. Say me pig marry." The officers led her away to New York's Tombs prison and charged her with murder. In the aftermath of the crime, prosecutors accused Maria of committing cold-blooded murder, alleging she had premeditated the act to reclaim her lost honor and to gain access to Cataldo's savings. The prosecution's narrative painted a picture of a calculating woman who had plotted to kill her lover. This theory relied heavily on the assumption of premeditation, which carried the gravest of consequences: capital punishment. The defense tried to counter this narrative by highlighting Cataldo's despicable character. They argued that he had a history of seducing young women, which set the stage for Maria's rage. The defense contended that her reaction was not a product of calculation, but rather an impulsive act driven by the fury and humiliation of Cataldo's mockery. When Maria had implored him to marry her, his laughter and the statement, "Only pigs marry," struck a chord deep within her, igniting a moment of rage that led to the tragic incident. When her trial began on July the 11th, the defense motioned for the charge to be reduced to second-degree murder, a non-capital offense. But Judge John Goff denied this request, asserting that the evidence pointed toward premeditated intent. In a crucial moment of the trial, Maria took the stand, testifying in her native Italian. Despite the imperfect translations that the jury heard, her emotional account revealed the depth of her despair. She described how she had loved Cataldo and had hoped for a future together, claiming she could not remember the fatal moment of the attack. Her testimony was further supported by her mother, who recounted the desperation felt by both mother and daughter in the face of Cataldo's refusal to take responsibility for his actions. This testimony began to elicit public sympathy, particularly among women who resonated with Maria's struggles. Many women viewed her as a victim of circumstances, caught in a web of societal expectations in a male-dominated society. They rallied behind her, advocating for her innocence and questioning the fairness of the legal proceedings. But Judge Goff remained unmoved by this growing tide of sympathy. In his instructions to the jury on July the 15th, he sternly advised them not to show compassion simply because Maria was a woman. Goff asserted that if she had intended to kill Cataldo, her actions constituted first-degree murder. His remarks were both condescending and dismissive, asserting that any claims of innocence were unfounded. It is, in my opinion, futile to claim before any sensible men constituting a jury that she intended to use that razor at the time for some purpose not disclosed, he declared, reinforcing the notion that Maria's actions were calculated. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning with a guilty verdict. Judge Goff sentenced Maria Barbella to death by electrocution at Sing Sing prison near Albany. The news of Maria's sentence transformed the case into a national sensation. The public's outrage was palpable, with many questioning the fairness of the judicial process and the societal norms that allowed a man to exploit a woman's vulnerability without consequence. As the story gained traction, prominent figures such as philanthropist missionary Rebecca Foster and the Countess de Braza took up the cause. They hired new legal representation for Maria and initiated a widespread petition drive gathering thousands of signatures urging Governor Levi Morton to either pardon Maria or commute her sentence. An appeal was filed, effectively halting her impending execution. Frederick House, Maria's new lawyer, argued vigorously for a new trial. He asserted that the prosecution had failed to provide adequate evidence of premeditation and accused Judge Goff of numerous judicial errors, including the exclusion of vital testimony that could have swayed the jury's perspective. On April the 21st, 1896, after spending 11 months in Sing Sing, the New York State Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Maria, granting her a new trial based on the argument that her defense had been severely hampered by the exclusion of critical evidence. The appellate court highlighted the multiple errors made by Judge Goff, including his failure to maintain impartiality throughout the proceedings. She remained in jail for another 7 months before her retrial finally began on November the 16th, 1896, before a new judge, H.A. Gildersleeve. The defense was prepared to present a more robust case showcasing the Barbella family's history of mental instability and alcoholism. They called numerous Italian witnesses who testified to the mental health issues that plagued Barbella's family, suggesting that her actions might have stemmed from a hereditary condition. Maria's parents provided testimony about a previous suicide attempt she had made, describing how their daughter had once jumped from a roof and had no memory of the incident afterwards. This revelation painted a disturbing picture of a young woman battling psychological issues that they believed could have contributed to her actions. During the trial, Maria herself articulated her struggle, saying, "Sometimes I feel a machine in my head, and the pain is so great I cannot stand it." Her case benefited from Maria's newfound ability to speak English, having learned the language during her time at Sing Sing, thanks to the guidance of the warden and his wife. During her testimony, she revealed her emotional turmoil and her contemplation of suicide, asserting that she had intended to take her own life if Cataldo rejected her final plea for marriage. The razor, she claimed, was meant for her own death, not for murder. The defense further argued that Cataldo had been carrying a knife when he was killed, a fact corroborated by police reports which complicated the narrative of a premeditated attack. Character witness, including Julia Sage, the wife of Sing Sing's warden, testified to Maria's inability to commit such a calculated crime, asserting that she was incapable of premeditated murder. Throughout 9 days of grueling medical testimony, doctors supporting the defense painted a vivid scenario in which Maria had killed Cataldo during an epileptic fit, triggered by the emotional shock of his cruel rejection. While the prosecution presented experts who argued that she was fully aware of her actions at the time of the incident. In a powerful closing argument, House redirected the burden of proof onto the prosecution. He emphasized that the only undeniable truth was Maria's suffering from epilepsy, which had been exacerbated by the psychological strain of her relationship with Cataldo. Distressed at Domenico's insults and unaware of her own illness, he argued, she killed a man whom, at any rate, the city will not miss. As quickly as the jury had reached a guilty verdict during the first trial, this time, on December the 10th, they found Maria Barbella not guilty. The news swept through the courtroom, leading to a wave of relief and disbelief. She was freed immediately, spared from the electric chair that had loomed over her like a dark cloud. After her release from prison, Maria once again captured public attention when she heroically rescued a neighbour who had accidentally set herself on fire. Less than a year later, she married Francesco Paolo Bruno, a fellow immigrant from her village in Italy, and she gradually faded from the limelight. By 1899, Maria was a mother to her son Frederick, and by 1902, she was living with her parents and husband, embracing a quieter domestic life. In 1940, she was found living as Mary di Chiara with her second husband Ernesto on Pike Street in Manhattan. Maria passed away on March 24, 1950. Her story continues to resonate, reminding us of the often unseen struggles faced by women in the face of patriarchal society. Did Maria Barbella truly escape the consequences of cold-blooded murder? Or was her act a desperate response to the abuse and oppressive circumstances she faced? Let us know what you make of this case in the comments below. Right then, take care. And I'll see you next time with another story to make you say, well, I never.